Hello and welcome back to Holy Discourse, where we're going to talk about California fires, specifically Distractable, talking about California fires.
Want to know what this is?
Isn't that a fire steel?
It's a fire starter. Speaking of fire,
Hey, wait a minute, show that to camera. Is that used? What have you been doing?
I was going to say, is that a little dangerous in LA right now?
no.
It looks a little blurry to me. They say fire steels get blurry when they get used.
They self-censor when they get used, yeah. Like the Sims going in a shower. No, so yeah, there was fires. It was a crazy time. So for those who don't know, we didn't have an episode yesterday because I was evacuated. Actually, specifically that day, I didn't have power.
Yeah, we were going to record, and then literally the morning of, you were like, well, they cut off our electricity. You thought that was going to be the worst thing that happened that week.
Also, we mean our yesterday, not yours. If this comes out today, wow, what a turnaround.
So now I'm going to take you back in time to last Tuesday for me, which was, what day was that?
The 7th.
Right. So the 7th, the power was out. So I was like, I'll go run some errands. And as I was driving out, I saw this plume of smoke in the distance. And I was like, that's weird. I know that they said it was a red flag warning. So when the windstorm came in, which was really unprecedented, like that morning, the wind was gusting up.
I imagine seeing fire out your back window, you'd be like, this is very concerning.
80 miles an hour where we were, which was just really intense. And then there was a lull. It said there was going to be a lull in the wind for a few hours. So I was like, okay, I'll go out and run some errands, get some supplies if our power's out, make sure we have some water and whatnot. And I saw a plume of smoke in the distance. And I called Amy. I'm like, hey, what's going on? There's some smoke. And she said the Palisades were on fire. So at this point, the Palisades had already been burning all day. Someone reported a fire in the Pacific Palisades at 10:15 a.m. At 10:33, firefighters started diverting resources. There were some other small fires going on in the area, but this was obviously the big one. And so this was what I saw. And I went out around like noon or 1 o'clock. And so what's weird is I didn't know about the fire until then, probably because I wasn't tuned into the right channels. I wasn't listening to the right things. But I went out and I came back and I was like, oh, and as I was driving back, the winds were picking up. So we kind of shelter up. And I didn't realize how bad it was going to be even for over there until the day progressed, right? So as the day progressed, we started to get notice of this app called Watch Duty, which I think I talked to you guys about. Great app. I never knew about it before, but it specifically is like user reported and also integrates official reporting of fires, locations, updates, evacuation zones, evacuation orders. You can check out Fire Watch trail cams. You can see some of the trails that are coming up here. And I'm going to jump ahead in time a little bit because I want to show you a picture of one of the trail cams, right? This one actually is not Pacific Palisades. This is the Eaton one, which was close to us. So here's you see like this is a trail cam, and
goodness.
Then this shows like where the trail cam's pointing, and then it also has another camera on it. I don't know if you can see that. That's just fire. So this is an imagery from one of the trail cams, and its last captured image is just roaring flames up on the camera,
goodness.
Which was just crazy to see. I couldn't even wrap my heads around what was going on there, but that's a little ahead of time, and then I realized like, oh, it's on fire. So that evening, January 7th, still Tuesday, we kind of prepped some things to go. We're like, okay, we should.
I wonder if like all of LA just feels like uber hot, like just uber hot. Like even if you're far away from it, because I know like, burning leaves when the seasons change, we'll gather it up, all the leaves up, and then we burn them. And working on that, like just even being near the fire on that, like it is hot. I cannot stand it. Like I have to take a lot of breaks and be like, whew, this is, it'll be like 30 degrees outside. Like it's like freezing outside and I'm gathering all these leaves up and then like burning them. And it's so hot that I'm like almost getting sick. It's so hot. And I'm like, when it's 30 degrees outside, so I can only imagine what California feels like right now.
Probably be ready, because there wasn't a fire near us just yet. We did not know about it. But when the Eden fire broke out, I could see it from my window. Like I could legitimately, from the moment that it was starting to grow a little bit bigger, like on the hillside in the distance, like I might like have a circle about like my hands clasped together. But if you were looking at a mountain on the other side and you clasp your hands together and you look through your hands like that, a patch that big on the mountain is burning fire. It was scary, but we didn't evacuate just yet. We kind of like prepped everything. We left the house just out of precaution. We were kind of like waiting to see what was going to happen because it was all about the wind blowing. But then when we gathered up with Ethan and we were just like hanging out, and they were like, okay, let's go back and let's see. We don't know where it's going to end up. We don't know what's going on. We started really following the Watch Duty app, and we had not been evacuated at that point. We weren't even a warning, because they do a warning zone and then an evacuation that's closer in. So they stagger it like that. They do a warning, you're up, you're on deck, you might need to go, and then it's like this place needs to go.
You can tell Mark's been helping out his neighbors and stuff. Look how scratched up he is and bruised and.
This place needs to go and go. So at 2 a.m., I basically was like, I'll just stay up all night so I can keep watch of everything and I can report it. So at 2 a.m., I actually brought out my Red camera and I put a 200 millimeter Minolta on that bad boy, and I got some really good footage of the fire that I haven't offloaded. I would show you, but it's just a fire that's creeping. But it was cool to see because I could see it progressing, right? So I took a 5-minute clip, and reminder, the wind is blasting, so I'm holding my camera outside, hoping a branch doesn't hit the lens, pointed at the other hillside, and I'm just like trying to brace it for a steady shot, so it's a little shaky. Like, it's the kind of wind where Chica and Henry, their fur is just like all the way back, and they're just like, what's happening? But with the smoke and the ash, we were trying to avoid getting them outside, so we're kind of sheltered up. Around 4 a.m., 2 hours later, I'd still been staying up. I was just debating going to sleep because I was like, I don't know if anything's going to happen. Bwah, bwah. Like, all of our phones, like, Catherine was staying over as well. So it was like Amy, myself, and Catherine, and all of our phones were like, gling, gling, gling. And it was, you're on deck for evacuation. Our zone turned yellow, and it's like, oh, holy shit. So we start throwing bags in the car, piling everything up as best we can. And then by the time we were packed, it turned red. Like, we were already going to go.
Oh my goodness.
So we're just like, fuck. And then we head out, and we...
That's quick. I mean, it probably took them like 10, 15 minutes to pack up their crap and go. Because I'm assuming they already kind of had go bags ready.
We drove down, we stayed with some friends. But yeah, from 4 a.m. till about 3 days ago, we weren't able to come home because we just didn't know where this fire was going to go. There was a distinct possibility that the fire would spread beyond containment if the winds kept up. If the winds had kept up, I don't think my house might not still be here, despite their best efforts, because they couldn't fly planes in the winds, and that was the biggest problem. They could not do any water drops from the air, which is like the main way that they're able to contain and control the spread and travel of the fire. And so it kind of just swept through all of us of a place called Altadena. Altadena is like north of Pasadena, Altadena, and it's a very old neighborhood. As I was saying in a video update that I made, it's an extremely old neighborhood with a lot of very old houses of families that have been there a very long time. It has a lot of history. There's a huge amount of history there. Fire just plowed right through there, all along the ridgeline. Like, there's a satellite image that shows it before and after of like before the fire and after the fire, and it's just like it's gone. Like, it's just gone. Looking at that, we just had no idea how far it was going to spread because it just seemed like they were not able to do anything. And there's a lot of people that are talking about like, oh, it's like a mismanagement of resources, yada yada. When the winds are that strong, there is nothing that you can do. The Amy showed me.
I mean, yeah, if planes can't or helicopters can't get to you because the winds are so strong, there's no management control. It's literally just being like, God, could you chill on the wind?
A clip. This puts it in perspective of just how, like, this is what it was.
Oh my goodness.
I've seen other clips of like close to the action and close to the fire type stuff, and even further away, it's insane how many embers were just getting absolutely blasted, like way up into the air, way far from the fire, and then they traveled so quickly. What was I? Oh yeah, the wind. Anyway, yeah, there was just like fire embers were just like falling from the sky in places where the fire was close, but like it wasn't like the front lines of the fire. People are just like there's one that was going around. There was like a McDonald's, I think, in Altadena. The McDonald's, like an ember had landed, and the sign and part of the front of McDonald's was on fire, and it was just like it looked like it was fake because it was like hurricane wind.
It did look like it was fake. It insane. I was like half convinced it was AI for a second. And I'm like, no, this is really happening. But I mean, it wild to see.
And the fire was like, just chill out, I'm on fire already. Like, fuck, that's enough wind. And the wind was like, yeah, we're doing this. The videos of that sort of stuff is like unreal, because that's not what it usually looks like. I've seen a lot of, when we lived in the Bay Area, we were fairly close. We were in the yellow get ready to evacuate zone for like a week, and so I saw a lot of clips of fires and people fighting wildfires. Never looked like that. None of the stuff that we experienced when we were up there looked like that at all.
That's the important thing that people need to realize in this context. It is not an exaggeration to say that these were hurricane force winds. It was as if a hurricane rolled in, and instead of rain, it was fire. That's
from the videos that I seen. Yeah, I mean, it looked like hurricane winds. Like trees were like almost like doubled over. Like if there wasn't fire everywhere, I would think that like a hurricane was coming in.
legitimately what it was when these fires were cropping up. And there's some allegedly arson that was occurring, which, you know, I don't know exactly specifically what the circumstances of that is. You know, everything is still trying to be figured out. One of them seems to be an electrical fire. It seems like Eaton was, there's some video that came out that was Eaton was definitely starting around the base of a large power transformer, which is for transfer across large distances, which was a definite risk of all this. That's what people were most worried about, is that the wind was going to knock down power poles in random locations, and that was causing a downed electrical line, which was going to spark, which obviously can start a fire, and that was the largest concern. The problem is you don't have eyes everywhere, so the reporting of it had to be largely from citizens just being like, there's a fire over there. So the sources of it are indeterminate to the result of it at this point, right now at this juncture. Down the road, you know, blame can be assigned and sources can be met, but it should be reiterated, just to combat anything out there, that there was nothing that could have been done in the moment. Preventative is another question, but even the best laid plans in the face of an unprecedented event like this are really kind of go to shit. A lot of the firefighters were even saying, as they were progressing through the Altadena fires, like, we train for, you know, residential fires all the time, but for a typical house fire, they need 3 engines, right? 3 engines. There were 5,000 houses on fire. There aren't enough firefighters in the state there aren't enough fire trucks in the state, definitely, to assign 15,000 fire trucks to each house to continue.
That, you can't call everyone there, because, like, what if a fire starts in another town? Like, on the other side of California. There's no fire trucks there then.
That kind of fire. That just is unfeasible. You can't prepare for that. You can't train for that. Getting it beforehand is another thing. But again, with the winds, no drops, no air support at all is possible. And that's like the main objective and the main weapon against trying to fight these fires. And again, I'm not an expert, but I've learned a lot in the past few days about how these are done, and I've seen firsthand of what it was all about. It was ridiculous. The biggest difference between the spread of these fires, I think, did you guys see the Hollywood Hills fire that started after the Eaton fire?
A little bit, yeah.
I've seen a lot of clips, but I don't know one from the other from what I've seen.
So I watched this unfold live with the other people that we were sheltering up with. We watched it from the very beginning, the first moment, because the Watch Duty app said immediately there is a new fire in within a certain mile radius of where you are. So we turned on the news and we could see there was a chopper on the scene looking at it, being like, this fire is a problem. He was literally calling out that street. Because it was so close to everything else. That street right there, they need to evacuate. Like, he was calling it and saying it with that urgency. But the difference being, the winds were calm enough that air support could get in there. And even though they did evacuate a lot of the area as a precautionary measure, and again, anyone that gets pissed off at an evacuation, it's an inconvenience where the worst case scenario is you die. So, you know, it being delayed a little bit or inconvenience.
No, Mark. We need to politicize this. I think that's the right way to handle any kind of catastrophe or tragedy, is political.
Yeah, and our political correspondent, Wade, will now take it over.
Yeah, I can't believe the propaganda. The fire voted wrong in the last election, and honestly, it's their fault. That fire'd still be going if they'd voted correctly.
I believe in fire rights.
Fire 2026.
Isn't that like the 29th Amendment, fire rights?
Sure.
They have their own festival that I hear is pretty successful.
Anyway, the difference being they could make airdrops on that fire. So I saw them, and there were some good drops. Have you guys seen any of the clips of like the water drops that just extinguish a whole hillside? Oh,
those clips go so hard. Have you seen any of the like cockpit footage?
I saw one.
Dude, the guys in the big, they're like DC-10s, I think, or they're like big planes where they come in, and from the cockpit, it looks like they're just flying at the ground, and the guy is just like, and at the last second, they're just like, yeah, they push the button. It looks fucking crazy. Like, I'm sure it's all very controlled because they're professionals, but even the video is like, holy shit, that's how I would do that in a video game. That shit's crazy.
It's that crazy, I'm sure, but they're very skilled at what they do. And what I was told that I never even considered is, as they're dropping, they have to change their trajectory based on the different weight dropping out of the ship. So they gotta anticipate that, know exactly what correction to make as the water is leaving, because the weight of the plane is just like dropping like a rock or like a giant pile of water. Yeah, no, they're very, very good at what.
I can't imagine how skilled you'd have to be to, like, fly a helicopter or a plane like that then. I mean, the risk of crashing at that point, of, like, letting that much water go, I can only imagine the weight is a huge difference. I mean, if you've seen them pick up, I mean, they don't pick up just, like, a couple of gallons. I mean, it's a crap ton of water.
what they do. It is incredible, and just like again and again, just like boom, 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 scoop up more water, boom, boom, boom. Like it is nuts, and it's just weird to think about because with the Eden fire, you had 5,000 houses that burned down. Palisades was bigger, still is happening right now as I'm speaking. The Palisades is not contained. It is in a better situation than it was before, but it is absolutely not contained. Same with the Eden fire, it's not contained. They report containment by literally going, because they can contain it based on like controlling the spread. So that's when they create a perimeter that it can't cross, and they're like, this is contained. But they cannot declare it contained until they go around there and physically check to make sure there are no hotspots spreading past their containment line. So it takes a while to get the containment, but even now, like the Palisades was more, it was bigger. So anyone that was like, that's ever saying like, oh man, they didn't have enough water, or like Elon making an ass out of himself in front of the LA fire chief.
Oh, I got a side tangent about that, man.
God, those and like he's still going. Even right now, he's still yammering on, just lie after lie, and so many people are just...
Did you see, this is unrelated to the fires, but did you see his Path of Exile 2 drama?
Oh, yeah, I've seen that.
I watched a Path of Exile 2 content creator like, all right, I'm gonna make Elon's build. What you need to do is worry about item level and number of things. Just watching him, it was so funny watching him like very obviously take an account that someone else had boosted for him and he had no idea what he was doing. He's like, I need this white crossbow in my inventory.
His Elden Ring build should have been the...
Yeah, he tries to be relatable, but he's really not. He just... I do not understand that man. There's some things where I'm like, oh, that's not like a bad point. And then there's other stuff where I'm like, I do not trust you as far as I can throw you, which is not very far.
Most obvious of terrible skills in game.
He had a stash tab named Elon's Maps or whatever. He's like, yeah, guys, it's a hardcore grind I've been doing for a while. I named a stash tab after myself.
Hey, maybe he's just like that. Maybe his whole life is filled with Elon's things. You don't know. Inside his Tidy Whitey's band, it says Elon's underwear.
I'm sure he's done lots of good, but man, he... Whew.
Anyway, it's what needs to be reiterated over and over and over again is unprecedented. That is the biggest thing to say about this entire situation. The amount of trucks, the amount of hoses, the amount of water being drawn from the reservoirs is unprecedented. Water pressure obeys the laws of physics, and reservoirs are of a certain size. No matter what you can say or whatever have you, there's a physical limitation. And when you're fighting with something of this unprecedented amount, you can say for sure that there should have been more preparation, absolutely, but to get to the level of preparation you would need to combat an unprecedented challenge is not within 6 Sigma declaration of statistical probability that you would account for normally. It just isn't there, or it wasn't there, and it's not something that is helpful right now when the most important thing is that the fires are still not out and there is another wind event coming along, and yet people are just like, for no reason other than petty personal political gain.
No. The problem is we pay people a livable working minimum wage when we should be building lasers that shoot water at California and these kind of things.
Cold lasers. I've always said it. We should figure that out.
Moon lasers that shoot water, but no, instead people gotta eat food or whatever.
They need to hire that Ice to Meet You guy from those movies. Where is he at these days? What's he doing?
You mean the governor? He used to be there.
If the governor was still in office, none of this would be happening, I assume.
I can't think of a good political name for Mr. Freeze.
Mr. Spending Freeze.
The Governezer? No, that doesn't work.
I'm sorry. Is he in A Christmas Story? Is Governezer Scrooge?
God freeze you, everyone.
This is the thing that made me laugh. Feels weird to find comedy in it, but one of my favorite things I think I've seen is there's been a lot of shit online of people being completely lacking any empathy whatsoever for anyone, especially people who are in the Palisades area, because people outside of the situation are just like, aren't they all just rich movie stars? Just shut up and buy another $1 million mansion. Like, whatever. It's not like I don't.
I mean, I'm sure there are people who could just buy another home, but there's a lot of people that just... Homes are expensive. A lot of people can't just buy another home.
Understand why people feel that way, but no, everyone who lives in Pacific Palisades is not in the 1%, can buy anything they want. It's not like that. But there was this one guy, and I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, which is funny, but apparently he was on like a TV show like a while ago, like 15 years ago. He was on a successful TV show, and since then he hasn't like done too much. He's been laying low, doing whatever, sort of half retired celebrities do. And he posted a social media, and he was like, for the last 2 decades since I finished my role on TV show, everyone's been telling me I'm washed, I'm nobody, I'm a C-lister, Now, thanks to this fire, suddenly I'm a huge multi-millionaire. I'm a douchebag who should just go buy another mansion. What a rebrand. I did not expect.
Only if your bank account would reflect that, right? It's like, what was it, PewDiePie? They were like, oh, he's got this much money or whatever, and PewDiePie's like, I don't. I mean, I'll take it, but I don't.
Pacific Palisades Fire to be such a powerful rebrand for my persona, but man, am I somebody now.
I can't. Yeah, it's the cognitive dissonance to try to lump this entire experience into one category that you can point people at and be like, hate this thing. This is why this is bad. And it's a strategy that's been employed for many, many years. That is just like create an enemy that people can focus their anger upon. When in reality, that's not the situation. People lose sight of the fact that there is families that have lost everything. There are people that have lost their lives that have of all party affiliation, of all political spectrum. Like you actually have an example of the Palisades, because even if you think of them as like a rich town with all the celebrities and millionaires and we shouldn't care about them, then you have Altadena over here, which is historically family homes of lower income, of normal, quote unquote, everyday American lives, even if they live in LA, because LA is so big, people don't have any context of what it is. These are on opposite ends of the city.
Everyone in LA is a billionaire. We all know it. The worker at McDonald's in LA clearly live in a mansion and they're like, I'm just so rich. I want to go make burgers. I'm so rich. I want to go do.
I mean, I think the problem is like people will see like what they make and they're like, oh my goodness, the person from McDonald's makes so much money, but then they don't realize like, oh, it's actually like cost of living is so much more too.
X job, you know.
Yeah, there's like mom and pop small businesses over there in Altadena that are burned to the ground, that have been there for 40 something plus years. Many, probably more. No, even if it was a 20-year business, that doesn't discredit it from being like a historical piece of that community. And they're gone. Like they're just gone. And it doesn't matter who they believed in, because there's people out there that are just like shouting at how they're wrong for what they've lost and not even focusing on any effort to help them rebuild. Meanwhile, here in California, it's like a battle of trying to fend off like, no, that's not, we're on fire, hey, hold on, please, and then trying to like,
you did this to you, slap.
Exactly, that's what it is. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Look, I'm an Ohio native, but I've been here in California for like 10 years, and one thing that I will say is like the people of this city, Los Angeles specifically, I can't speak to other cities, is like they really, really love their city. They really, really are prideful of what they have and what they've lost, and the beautiful.
I would say that's probably California in general. Like, watching Peter Sanantello, I'm gonna say his last name is. He does like a lot of documentaries, and I've been watching a lot of documentaries of him going to California and going to different places in California. This is before all the LA fires and everything, and people are like very passionate, like from what town they are, whether it's like super uber small towns in California or really big ones. I mean, I guess I always just think of like LA and San Francisco and stuff like that, and I'm like, oh, this is what California is like, but really it's a lot more diverse, and there's a lot more like countryside and people who have different political opinions. It's a very diverse state, which is interesting because their state in general always seems, they're not like a swing state. I mean, they have a huge electoral college, but they always vote Democrat, just like Texas always votes Republican. And it's more of Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Florida that are like the swing states of like, what are they going to vote? Which usually they vote, like they'll vote Democrat one year and then Republican and then Democrat. It's usually not back to back. Usually.
Thing is how many people have come together to contribute to those who are actually affected, the actual physical help that is occurring. That's what people should focus on, where meanwhile everyone else is playing a blame game while there's people suffering. Some people are still, they don't have a home, they don't have a place to go, they're in a shelter now, and for the indeterminate future they're going to stay there. Like rebuilding is going to take years, even if it doesn't rebuild in the exact same way, trying to make sure that it rebuilds in a way that is actually conducive to the type of people that were living there. I mean financially, you know, instead of becoming like big mega apartments or big big, huge mega mansions, which it wasn't. That's not what it was.
This is a very background thing for me, but I can only imagine in terms of the kind of peril that LA and the real estate that was affected by the fires is in right now, because all of the huge development companies who like to turn everything into ugly, nondescript apartments and more parking lots and shopping centers and shit are looking at this and they're like, these people who've owned this house since it was a $200,000 house and now it's like a $1.5 million house, or I don't know if that's accurate, but like, right, these regular Americans who own these houses who are not millionaires bought them. Well, they were still expensive, but they were in a big city and they bought them back before they were $1 million houses.
Yeah, that makes me wonder, like, insurance wise, like, what happens, like, when your house burns down, and that, like, do you get a big sum of money, or they're just like, oh, here's like 200,000? Because, like, if you just sell it burnt down, like, just as land, it depends where you're at, but I would assume you wouldn't get as much money as if the house was standing there and it was all good.
Houses, they still can't afford to just buy $1 million house. There's a lot of people who, if they don't get some sort of assistance and if it doesn't coalesce in a way, companies are just going to swoop in, buy their valuable property and turn it into more corporately developed garbage that is going to sort of ruin some of these very old communities potentially. That's very back burner because there's literally still fire on the ground consuming more people's businesses and houses and stuff. That's a serious threat, and that would be very sad in some of these places where it really was like family businesses, local stuff, communities that are now, that hopefully they can rebuild, and it'll still be a great community. It'll just have to be new.
Well, it doesn't have to happen if people pay attention, especially to the local communities, because cities, they are in control of their zoning, and they can shoot down, and all these projects would have to be submitted for approval. And if they don't get approved, they don't get built there unless there's bribes going on. But I think with this, there is a strong way to make sure that the people who are easily forgotten are actually taken care of. But that's only by holding that thought in your mind for a very long time, that's what needs to happen. And so that's something that I'm hopefully going to be a part of as much as I can. Otherwise, I'll just keep my chainsaw and I'll keep hacking at trees.
Hey, you can snipe them now with your knife.
Yeah, with my knife, with my scope. You should see the scope on my chainsaw. That thing, woof.
In a related horrible note, here in Cincinnati, we had 2 feet plus of snow.
What?
While you guys were burning, we got dumped on with like one of the bigger snows we've had in years.
Yeah, California is on fire and the other half of the country is frozen. I mean, even southern states are cold. I think it was Texas that they were worried about pipes freezing. Because from what I understand, they don't have like the insulation and stuff like that northern homes have. And so when it got like 30 degrees, they were like, oh crap, the pipes could freeze.
2 feet?
I believe it was between 20 and 26 inches.
Where we are on the north, almost northwest, it was more like 8 inches to a foot.
Even that though, I can't tell you the last time I was in Cincinnati and there was that much snow. 3-4 inches, sure, that happened.
This was like in a 24-hour period. Like this was a quick big dump.
Holy shit.
With our little dachshunds, with Presley and Ginger, I was out there shoveling I think like 7 times, so they had a place to go potty. And it's like we would shovel and there'd be half an inch where I started because it was just coming down so quickly. I don't know that anything major happened because of it. I was kind of like, in jest. We did get one of the bigger snows we've had in a very long time, and then 4 or 5 days later we got like another 3 or 4 inches. So then it warmed up for a couple days, so then it kind of like condensed. Now it's kind of like that more compact snow. I mean, at the very least it was 18. We had at least 1.5 to 2 feet of snow on the ground.
And it's the crazy thing where I'm like, okay, let's not be political about this, but some of these things should not be political at all. Like climate change, right?
I don't know, man. Our snow was pretty communist. It was working together in ways that I didn't like.
I love you, Wade.
All right, anyway, go ahead.
All of it centered on like, oh man, they're just
When Wade gets political.
like, it's a conspiracy. They're just lying to you. And I just keep looking around and I'm like, what's the lie? What do they gain from the lying of this? Oh, at worst, they're like, we want people to not die from increase.
I was gonna say I don't understand climate change that much. Whether just say like, oh, it's true or it's not. I haven't done the research, so I'm not gonna weigh in on that. But I mean, it's clearly, obviously, something's happening because there's just been crazy weather stuff just happening year after year, and it's like more consistent. Where it's like this hasn't happened in 100 years, or this hasn't happened in this many years. So obviously something's going on.
Increasing severity of natural disasters. Ah! You know, I just it's and who is telling this the perspective of it? It all comes from like the same group of people, which is like, you know, coal and oil companies, and it's like, I wonder why they're saying it's not real. Have you guys had an electric vehicle? They're fucking awesome. It's way better.
Isn't it electric vehicles? Isn't that like they're oh, what do you call it? Is it eco footprint? Something? I want to say that they're like their footprint is super big. Just from like creating it. Carbon footprint, eco footprint, whatever. I don't know if that's still true, but I know that was true in the past, as like just making the car in general left a huge carbon footprint, and it wasn't good. But I know that it was like, oh, this is probably going to be better over time. So I don't know where that is now, but
Man, let me tell you, I finally traded out my Tesla.
Ooh.
I did it specifically because all this was happening. I've been meaning to do it forever. I've hated that son of a bitch for years. I hated it since the moment I got it.
Didn't it break immediately?
It broke immediately.
At least it was cheap to fix.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, it was under warranty, thankfully, but getting into an approved shop to do that, well, that was a different story. Man, the suspension broke within the first 100 miles. Their fancy suspension broke. They installed the wrong part for the charging port so that the Tesla chargers didn't fit in it. I had to crack it by physically pushing it so hard, it split it, and then it fit in and it worked perfectly. Because otherwise I would have been stranded in the middle of winter, in the middle of nowhere at this 4-bay Tesla charger with nothing. So I shoved it in there. I've hated it. The suspension is broken like 4 times. The last time was out of warranty, and I had to be like, I have to get rid of this piece of shit. You know what I got instead?
Tell me you didn't get a Mach-E.
No.
I am so surprised that he's kept that sucker that long, because every time Tesla comes up, he talks about how much he hates it.
I did not get a Mach-E.
American car.
I did get an American car.
Did you get a Cadillac Lyric?
Nope. You're not going to guess it because it doesn't seem like a vehicle I would get.
Did you get a Rivian R1T?
Ford F-250.
Ford Lightning?
Ford Lightning!
Oh, hell yeah.
I never thought I'd be a truck guy. I got a Ford F-150 Lightning because I
Truck
looked at the
guys,
specs of what it
where-
could do in
where
terms of
it's
power
at.
delivery. The size of the battery is way bigger than the Teslas ever were. The range is not a lie. Those Teslas all lie about their range. It just blew.
Dude, I think it was, I don't know if they were on Top Gear or Grand Tour at that point, but they had tested Tesla cars, and they're like, this range is just not, it's just not accurate. And they had like, I'm sure it was actors, but supposedly they had like lawyers in there, and she's like, well, you can't say that because we don't know. And he's like, well, I do know because I've driven these, and they're just, he's like, it's not, he's like, it'll say, you know, I have so many miles left, but I don't. From what they were saying is because it was Tesla tests at like the perfect conditions, which it's the earth. It's never going to be perfect conditions. You're going to have rain, you're going to have heat, you're going to have cold, you're going to have, you know. So it seems like there's possibly goes into a miscommunication.
In my mind, I would watch it and I would go like, I've traveled 10 miles. Well, surely it's dropped 30 miles. All right, well, that's fine. It said I had like a 300-mile range on my Tesla. I got 180 at best, even when I was driving like this. It's just lies. But this one, I drive 10 miles, and it's like the range estimate only dropped 8, and I'm like, oh, thank you. Oh, thank you.
Now, hold on. The Tesla wasn't lying. Someone took the road signs and spread them out further. That wasn't the Tesla's fault.
It's crazy because this truck has a 240-volt plug in the back of it. I could run my render farm off of this truck. This truck has more power than all of my backup batteries that I put in my render farm by 3 times.
I want to see a Ford commercial with like a really nerdy dude driving his Ford Lightning with the render farm. He's like off-roading in the mud through the woods while like video game Let's Plays are like processing in the back.
I could. That's the crazy thing. I could. And so it's a weird segue.
Okay, with that, he starts talking about electric cars, and they start getting real nerdy into power. And Wade still not owning a car after God knows how many years he got hit by that semi. Um, but yeah, that's Mark's update of what his experience was with the California fires. Um, it's if you've watched any of the videos or anything like that, you know it it just does not look like real life. It just doesn't. Um, I just I hope everyone's safe. You know, stay safe out there, especially if you're in California, because it seems like a very risky place to live right now with all the fires going on. But yeah, I'll see y'all later. Bye.